The fluorescent lights of Ridgeview Medical Center flickered above, as Dr. Charles Reed's voice dripped with arrogance. "This isn't a shelter, sweetheart. Free treatments are down the street." His words cut through the air like cold steel. To him, the woman in the gray hoodie standing before him was just another nobody, someone poor, desperate, not worth his time. He couldn't see the quiet authority behind her trembling hands or the intelligence in her weary eyes. Her name was Amani Rivers, and the man humiliating her would soon wish he'd never spoken those words. By morning, she would own the hospital and him along with it. The emergency room buzzed with low voices and the restless hum of machines. Crying children, exhausted elders, the smell of antiseptic mixed with stale coffee. The night felt endless. Amani shuffled to the intake desk, one hand pressed hard against her side. The pain had started on her flight home, sharp and stabbing, and it hadn't stopped. Behind a plexiglass screen, Nurse Gina Parker typed lazily at her computer, her face expressionless after too many 12-hour shifts. "I need to see a doctor," Amani said through clenched teeth. "The pain's getting worse." Without even looking up, Gina slid a clipboard through the opening. "Fill these out. Insurance card and ID." "I have insurance," Amani said, trying to steady her breath. "But my wallet's in my checked bag." I came straight from the airport. Gina finally looked up, eyes flicking over the hoodie, the messy hair, the lack of makeup. Her lips curled slightly. "Without proof of insurance, you'll have to wait. Take a seat." The plastic chair felt like stone. Amani tried to focus on the small print of the forms, but the pain blurred her vision. Minutes bled into hours. One by one, other patients were called before her. Her head throbbed, her skin clammy, her breath short. Twice she returned to the desk. Each time Gina brushed her off with the same empty line, "Still processing your paperwork." By midnight, the waiting room had emptied and filled again. Amani's body felt like it was burning from the inside out. The double doors swung open, and out walked Dr. Charles Reed's silver hair, perfect posture, the air of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Dr. Reed." Amani forced herself to stand. "Please, I've been waiting for hours. Something's wrong." He glanced at her, irritation flashing across his face. "Ma'am, we're dealing with actual emergencies tonight. If you're just looking for a warm place to sleep—" "I'm not homeless," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm sick. I need help." "This isn't a shelter," he said louder, letting the words echo for everyone to hear. "If you want free treatment, County General's down the street." The security guards by the door chuckled. One nudged the other. "I can pay," Amani said, pulling out her phone. "Just let me, that's enough," Reed snapped, turning away. "Please escort this woman out. She's disturbing the other patients." "Don't touch me," she said, but the guards were already at her sides. Their hands clamped down hard, bruising her arms as they dragged her toward the door. Her phone fell, screen cracking against the tile. Around her, people stared but said nothing. No one moved. Through the fog of pain and humiliation, Amani saw Reed's smirk, the look of a man who believed he'd put a nuisance in her place. Then the doors slid shut with a soft whoosh, locking her out in the freezing night air. She stumbled against the brick wall, shivering. The emergency sign above glowed red through the glass doors that had just closed on her. Traffic passed, indifferent. Her side throbbed with each heartbeat. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows of her penthouse apartment the next morning. The world outside had no idea what had happened hours before. Amani blinked awake, her mouth dry, her body aching. On the nightstand, the clock read 7:15 a.m. She'd made it home somehow. Relying on the painkillers she always kept nearby, a habit formed from past encounters with hospitals that judged her before treating her. But last night had been worse, much worse. The sound of quick footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Julian Cole, her assistant and closest confidant, burst into the bedroom still wearing her coat. "Why didn't you call me last night? I just got your message. What happened? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Amani said quietly, propping herself up against the pillows. "Just a bad reaction to something." Julian frowned. "But they treated you, right?" "Treated me?" Amani gave a bitter laugh. "They treated me like I didn't matter." Her voice trembled, but her eyes hardened. "Their precious Dr. Reed took one look at me in a hoodie and decided I wasn't worth his time." Julian's jaw tightened. We need to go public. I still have contacts at the Times. This kind of discrimination, no. Amani interrupted sharply. The press will turn it into another sad headline about racism in healthcare. People will be angry for a week, then forget. She swung her legs off the bed, standing with quiet determination. Revenge works best behind closed doors. She walked to her desk and picked up her backup phone, the one not smashed on the floor. Remember that acquisition we've been planning? The one we've kept quiet? Julian blinked. Ridgeview Medical Center? Amani nodded. Time to pull the trigger. Within minutes, she was on the phone with her legal team. Execute those papers immediately, she said calmly. Full acquisition. Wire the funds as discussed. When she hung up, she turned to Julian. Call an emergency board meeting for 9 a.m. Make sure every department head is there. Julian hesitated. They'll want to know why. Tell them it's a surprise inspection, Amani said, walking toward her closet. And make sure Dr. Charles Reed attends. Especially him. You're going to destroy him, Julian murmured. He's just a symptom, Amani replied, pulling a black Armani suit from its hanger. I'm going to expose the disease. 2 hours later, the boardroom of Ridgeview buzzed with quiet conversation. The hospital's CEO, Thomas Grayson, stood at the head of the long mahogany table, discussing budget cuts. We need to reduce our costs by 15%, he said confidently. Too many non-paying patients clogging the system. Dr. Reed nodded eagerly. Exactly. If we tighten admission criteria, the heavy doors swung open. The click of heels echoed through the room. Every head turned as Amani Rivers walked in, flawless in her black suit. Her calm authority filled the space instantly. Julian followed behind, tablet in hand. I'm sorry, but this is a private meeting, Grayson began, rising. Security works for me now, Amani said coolly. As of 6 a.m. this morning, Metasphere Technologies has completed its acquisition of Ridgeview Medical Center. Shock rippled across the room. Reed's smug expression melted into confusion, then horror. That's impossible, Grayson stammered. The board would have to. The board approved this sale last month, Amani cut in smoothly. I simply expedited the transfer. She smiled thinly. Sometimes, it takes a personal experience to show what needs fixing. She moved around the table until she stood behind Dr. Reed. He twisted in his chair, pale as paper. Ms. Rivers, Dr. Rivers, she corrected softly, dropping a glossy photograph in front of him. It showed her being dragged from the ear. Pain etched across her face while he watched. You refused treatment to your new boss, she said. Would you like to repeat your words about this not being a shelter? Reed's mouth opened, but no sound came. Then let me be clear, she said. You're fired. Effective immediately. Chaos erupted. Grayson tried to protest. Other board members whispered. But one raised hand from Amani silenced them all. Security, she said evenly. Two guards entered the same door Reed had watched her thrown through the night before. Escort Dr. Reed out and collect his ID. Reed stumbled up, red-faced. You can't do this. I'll sue. For what? She said coldly. Discrimination? Negligence, please do. Discovery will be fascinating. The guards took him by the arms and led him away. This time, the whispers in the room carried a different tone, respect mixed with fear. And as the doors closed behind him, Amani Rivers smiled for the first time in 24 hours. The room was still vibrating with tension after Dr. Reed's exit. Every executive sat stiffly, eyes darting toward one another, uncertain what to do or say. The woman they had just dismissed as a nuisance had revealed herself as their new owner. Amani stood tall at the head of the table, letting the silence sink in. Now that formalities are out of the way, she said, her voice calm but commanding. Let's talk about how things will change around here. Thomas Grayson tried to recover his composure, adjusting his tie. Dr. Rivers, with all due respect, major policy changes require leadership. She interrupted. And as of this morning, that's me. Julian stood beside her, tapping on her tablet, ready with files and figures. Amani walked slowly round the room, her heels clicking against the polished floor. From this day forward, Ridgeview Medical Center will not turn away patients because of insurance, income, or appearance. You'll treat everyone who comes through those doors. A few murmurs rippled through the board. Grayson frowned. That's not financially sustainable. Then perhaps the problem, Amani said, pausing behind his chair, isn't the patient, it's the system. No one dared to argue. She could feel their unease, their resentment, their fear of losing control. Good. It meant they were finally listening. When the meeting ended, she left the boardroom and walked down the familiar hospital corridors, the same halls, where she'd been humiliated less than 12 hours earlier. The air looked different now, calmer, brighter under morning light. The same intake desk, the same plastic chairs, the same smell of antiseptic. But the air carried a new energy. Behind the desk, Nurse Gina Parker looked up and froze. Her face drained of color as she recognized the woman approaching. Dr. Rivers, I'm so sorry about last night. I didn't know who you were. I didn't mean. Amani stopped in front of the plexiglass window. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Don't worry, she said softly. I'm not here for revenge. Gina exhaled invisible relief. I'm here for reform, Amani added. The tone in her voice made it clear this wasn't a threat, but a promise. Gina nodded quickly, eyes down. When Amani turned to leave, she noticed the waiting room full of faces, poor, rich, young, old. Some recognized her from the news or the business world. Most didn't, and that was fine. They didn't need to know who she was to be treated with dignity. Her new office still smelled faintly of Grayson's cologne. The walls were lined with meaningless certificates and overpriced artwork meant to impress visitors. She stood by the window, watching the parking lot below, the city stretching beyond. Julian entered with a tablet in hand. You'll want to see this. On the screen were patient records, hundreds of them. Something's off, Julian said. Look at the redirect rates for minority patients. They're almost triple the rate for white patients with the same symptoms. Amani frowned. Show me the diagnostic codes. Julian swiped through the data. Most of the redirects are labeled non-emergency. But look at the notes: chest pain, internal bleeding, shortness of breath. These are serious conditions. A knock interrupted them. An older nurse with silver-streaked hair stepped inside. Her badge read Ella Davenport, RN. She looked cautious, but determined. I heard you were reviewing patient records, she said quietly. Been waiting 30 years for someone like you. Amani gestured for her to come in. Please, sit. I see you've already found the redirect patterns, Ella said, eyeing the files on the desk. You want the truth? I've been watching this happen every day since I started here. Young black mothers with preeclampsia. Latino grandfathers with stroke symptoms. They call it resource management. But we all know what it really is. She reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. I've kept my own records, names, dates. What happened to them? Julian leaned forward, eyes wide. You documented all of this? I had to, Ella said. Too many didn't make it to another hospital. Somebody had to remember their names. For the next hour, the three women cross-referenced Ella's notes with hospital records. The truth that emerged was chilling. Patients redirected for non-emergencies, who later died en route to other facilities or at home. Their deaths never linked to Ridgeview's denial of care. Julian pointed at the tablet. Look at this. The billing system shows charges for initial assessment on redirected patients. They were still billing insurance. Amani leaned closer. Minimal charges, but enough to add up. Millions over time. Hidden behind false coding. The money's being funneled, Julian said, her fingers flying over the keyboard, through 3 shell companies before landing in an offshore account. Grayson, Ella said flatly. He's been running this scam for years. Builds his empire on people's suffering. Amani's jaw tightened. Get me a full audit, she said. Every redirect, every dollar, every death for the past 5 years. Julian hesitated. Grayson has friends in the state board and the governor's office. If we dig too deep, let them come, Amani interrupted. I didn't build Metasphere by bowing to bullies. Ella nodded slowly. I'll help. I know where the bodies are buried figuratively, and sometimes not. The weight of her words hung in the air. Can you get me access to the security footage archives? Amani asked. I can do better, Ella replied. There's a backup server Grayson doesn't know about. Installed after a lawsuit years ago. I still have the access codes. That night, the 3 women worked in silence, the office lit only by desk lamps. The sound of rain tapped against the windows. Files piled high across the desk. Each new discovery painted a darker picture of corruption. At midnight, Amani finally told them to go home and rest. But she didn't leave. Instead, she walked down to the emptier. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. She stood by the same chair where she had sat in agony the night before the crooked blue one. With the worn fabric, she traced her fingers across its backrest, remembering every second of humiliation, every sneer, every moment she was treated as less than human. "Never again," she whispered. Her voice was low, but the words echoed through the quiet room. The next morning dawned gray and cold. Amani entered her office to find the door slightly ajar, though she was sure she'd locked it. Everything looked untouched except her computer. The monitor glowed with bold white letters against a black screen. "Drop the audit, or you'll regret it." Julian arrived moments later, out of breath. "The data team found something huge last night," she said, then froze when she saw the message. "Well, that's subtle. Have IT scanned my system for breaches," Amani said calmly, taking photos of the screen. "And get me everything on Grayson's technical staff." Julian nodded, already typing. "You think it's them? Who else?" A knock on the door interrupted them again. It was Ella, looking tired but composed. She took one glance at the screen and sighed. "Ah, they've started the warning phase." "The what?" Julian asked. "First come the messages," Ella said grimly. "Then the accidents. A broken window, a car following you home. Last time I tried reporting deaths, someone broke into my house. Didn't steal a thing, just wanted me to know they could." Amani's expression darkened. "You should have told me. I wanted you to have one peaceful night before it began," Ella replied quietly. "But now it's here. What are you going to do?" Amani walked to the window, rain streaking down the glass. "Julian, I want whistleblower protection policies drafted by end of day. Anonymous reporting. Job security for anyone who comes forward." "They'll fight it," Julian warned. "Let them." Amani turned back to face them. "And I want full transparency on hospital security protocols. Who has access, where, and when." Before Julian could respond, angry voices echoed down the hall. "Is that Dr. Reed?" Ella asked. The door burst open. Reed stood at the nurse's station nearby, red-faced, yelling at a reporter with a notepad. "This is discrimination," he shouted. 30 years of service thrown away because some tech executive wanted revenge. The reporter scribbled furiously as he continued. "She's using race to cover a corporate takeover. I'm being fired by a race-baiting opportunist." Julian's jaw clenched. "Want me to release the footage? Show everyone what he really did?" "Not yet," Amani said, watching Reed storm off. "Let him dig his grave deeper." That night, she sat alone in her penthouse, the TV flickering across the room. The news anchor's polished voice filled the air. Former Ridgeview physician Dr. Charles Reed accuses new owner Amani Rivers of discrimination and unethical practices. He claims he was wrongfully terminated. The camera cut to Reed, sitting comfortably in a studio, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. "This isn't about race," he said. "It's about keeping medicine in the hands of real doctors, not corporate algorithms." Amani muted the TV. A small, cold smile crossed her lips. "They still don't see me," she whispered. "Good." She sipped her wine, her reflection shimmering in the window. "They think I'm just a CEO with a grudge. Let's see how they handle a woman with a cause." The war had begun. The rain outside Amani's penthouse hadn't stopped all night. Thunder rolled in the distance, echoing like a warning. She stood by the glass window, staring at the storm, thinking about how many people had suffered because of men like Reed and Grayson. The people she was fighting for didn't have penthouses or lawyers. They had fear and pain and silence. That silence was what she intended to break. Her phone buzzed just after midnight. It was Ella. "Sorry to call so late," the nurse said, her voice hushed. "But I found something you should see. Can you come to the hospital?" Amani didn't hesitate. Within 20 minutes, she was in her car, driving through slick streets glistening under the rain. The hospital loomed in the distance, its fluorescent lights glowing like watchful eyes. Ella was waiting for her in the staff lounge, holding a weathered cardboard box. "Been keeping these at my sister's house," she said, placing it carefully on the table. Didn't trust leaving them here after what happened to me years ago. What's in it? Evidence, Ella replied. Every time they deleted patient files, I made copies. Been doing it for 15 years. Amani stared at her, stunned. You've been keeping proof all this time? Ella nodded. I tried to report it once, but they covered it up, threatened to fire me. So I started saving everything. I knew this day would come. She opened the box. Inside were dozens of flash drives, each labeled with dates and initials. Julian arrived minutes later, hair damp from the rain. She plugged the first drive into her laptop. How did you get access to all this? She asked. Night shift supervisor privileges, Ella said. People don't notice much when they think you're just an old nurse doing paperwork. For hours, the three women combed through the files. Each drive revealed more names, more stories. Patients labeled as voluntary walkouts, who were actually escorted out by security. Videos showed guards dragging people through the halls while doctors turned their backs. Look at this one, Amani said, her voice shaking as she pointed to the screen. This young man, he's clutching his side. File says he left voluntarily at 10:40 p.m., but the footage shows security forcing him out at 10:39. Miguel Ramirez, Ella whispered. 23 years old. Ruptured appendix. Died before they got him to county hospital. Julian's eyes stayed on the screen. That's 47 cases so far. Mostly Black and Latino patients. All marked as walkouts. And that's just what I had time to copy, Ella said bitterly. There were so many others. Amani stood, pacing the office. This isn't just racism. It's fraud. They altered records, changed billing codes, deleted evidence. She looked toward the window, her reflection cold and resolute. This runs deeper than we thought. Julian nodded grimly. It goes through administration, security, billing, maybe even insurance. All roads lead to Grayson. I need to talk to him, Amani said suddenly, checking her watch. He's still in his office. Julian reached out to stop her. Wait, we should build the case first. If he realizes we know. But Amani was already at the door. Keep digging, she said. I want to see his face when he realizes he's finished. Thomas Grayson's office smelled like power and expensive whiskey. The city lights shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. As he looked up from his desk, smiling that same polished, empty smile. Ms. Rivers, he said smoothly. What a surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure? 47 patients, Amani said, stepping closer. That's how many we've confirmed were denied care and later died. How many more are there? Grayson's smile didn't waver. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Miguel Ramirez, Maria Santos, James Wilson, she recited, her voice steady. All dead because your hospital turned them away. Those patients chose to leave, Grayson said coolly. We have the footage, Amani said, cutting him off. All of it. 15 years of records, altered files, fraudulent billing. Want to try again? For a split second, something flickered in his eyes in certainty. Then it was gone. He leaned back in his chair, straightening his tie. You have no idea what you're stepping into, Ms. Rivers. Ridgeview serves a vital role in this community. Disruption can be dangerous. Is that a threat? An observation, he said. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a dinner to attend. Amani didn't stop him. She simply watched as he left, his shoes echoing across the marble floor. The calm before the storm. Back in her office, Julian and Ella were still working when Amani's phone rang. Unknown number. She pressed speaker. A distorted voice crackled through the line. You're playing with people who can make you disappear. Then the line went dead. Julian stared at her. They just threatened to kill you. They threatened to make me disappear, Amani corrected quietly. That means we're close. Ella shook her head. You don't understand. They have friends everywhere, police, state board, city hall. They can bury this. Then we'll outsmart them, Amani said. We'll build the case so strong they can't deny it. Every name, every file, every death. Julian sighed, rubbing her temples. And then what? Amani's eyes hardened. Then we make sure the truth doesn't disappear. The office fell silent, except for the soft hum of Julian's laptop. Somewhere above them, there continued its endless rhythm, sirens, cries, the whir of machines. But down in that room, 3 women were building something unstoppable. one flash drive at a time. The next morning, sunlight barely pierced the thick clouds. Amani sat in her office, watching a news report play on the muted television. Sources claim that Metasphere CEO Amani Rivers may have fabricated evidence of racial discrimination. The anchor's voice was smooth, confident. Internal documents suggest patient records were altered to support her claims. On screen, Dr. Reed appeared again, tears glistening in his eyes. "I was just following hospital policy," he said. "Every patient who left signed voluntary discharge forms. Ms. Rivers is destroying my reputation to push her political agenda." Julian burst into the room, tablet in hand. Metasphere stock dropped 12% overnight. "The board's panicking." "Of course they are," Amani said quietly, muting the TV. "How did Reed get those documents?" "Someone leaked them," Julian said. "And they cherry-picked the data to make us look guilty." Before Amani could respond, Ella appeared in the doorway, her face pale. She held up her phone, hands trembling. "You need to see this." The screen showed her small brick house. Across the front door, spray-painted in dripping red letters, were the words "Race Traitor." "My granddaughter saw it first," Ella said softly. "She's 8. Amani's jaw tightened. "I'll have security posted at your house today. Cameras, alarms, everything." "That's not all," Ella said, handing her a letter. This came by certified mail. Inside was a notice from Dr. Reed's lawyer, an official threat of a defamation lawsuit unless Amani publicly retracted her accusations within 48 hours. Julian cursed under her breath. "They're hitting us from every side. Media, money, legal threats. It's coordinated." Amani read the letter carefully, then looked up, her eyes sharp with resolve. "They think this will scare us. They're wrong. We need solid proof," Julian said. "Something they can't twist." "The night they threw me out," Amani said suddenly, "there was a security camera. That footage must still exist." Julian frowned. "The digital files are gone. I checked every server." "What about physical backups?" Amani asked, turning to Ella. "Where does Ridgeview keep old security tapes?" "The basement archives," Ella said slowly. 5 years worth of footage, but it's restricted. Keycard access only." "I own this hospital," Amani said, grabbing her coat. "I have access to everything." Julian's eyes widened. "You're not seriously." "I am," she said. "If I'm not back in 2 hours, call our lawyers." "You can't go alone," Julian protested. "Security reports to Grayson," Ella said quietly. "The fewer people who know, the safer she'll be." Amani met their eyes, her voice calm. "They want to silence us. Fine, but not tonight." As she left the office and stepped into the dark hallway, her reflection followed her in the polished floor tiles, calm, determined, unbreakable. The truth waited below, and this time, she would not be the one dragged out of that hospital. The elevator creaked as it descended toward the basement of Ridgeview Medical Center. The air grew colder with each floor, the lights dimmer. Amani stood still, her reflection flickering in the metallic walls. The soft hum of machinery was the only sound until the doors slid open with a hollow clang. A wave of cold air hit her. The basement was silent, except for the faint buzz of old fluorescent bulbs. Rows of metal shelves stretched into the darkness, lined with boxes, reels, and dust-covered equipment. Somewhere in here lay the truth they had tried so hard to erase. Her heels clicked softly on the concrete as she walked deeper inside. The faint smell of disinfectant mixed with mildew. Every corner felt like it was watching her. She found a terminal near the back, a dusty old computer connected to a wall of blinking hard drives. She pressed the power button. Nothing. The machine groaned, then fell silent again. She tried once more, this time holding the button longer. The screen flickered to life, bathing the room in pale blue light. A login prompt appeared. She typed her credentials. Access denied. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Of course," she murmured. She tried a master override code, one that only the hospital owner would have. The system paused, then flashed access granted. She exhaled, opening the directory. Hundreds of video files appeared, each labeled by date and camera number. She scrolled back to the night she had been thrown out, the night everything began. Security_cam_3B_047, she whispered, clicking the file. The footage loaded slowly, grainy, and muted. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m. The camera faced the emergency room doors. She watched herself stumble in, clutching her side. The desk nurse Gina barely looked up. Minutes later, Dr. Reed appeared, his face twisted in irritation. Amani's jaw tightened as she watched the scene unfold from a distance. Every sneer, every dismissive gesture. Then came the part that made her stomach clench, the guards grabbing her arms, dragging her out while Reed stood there smirking. She paused the video. "This is it," she whispered. "The proof." Just as she reached for a flash drive, a sharp sound echoed through the basement. A metallic clang. Someone else was down there. She froze, listening. Another sound, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, approaching from behind the shelves. Amani turned off the monitor and crouched behind the terminal. The lights above flickered once, twice, then dimmed completely, leaving the basement in shadow. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady though her heart raced. No answer. Only the sound of breathing close now, somewhere between the shelves. Her fingers found the emergency flashlight mounted on the wall. She flicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness. A shape moved at the edge of the light, a man in a maintenance uniform. He froze as the light hit him. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you shouldn't be down here." "Who are you?" she demanded. "I'm supposed to lock this area after hours." He stepped closer, his eyes unreadable. "But it looks like you've been busy." Amani gripped the flashlight tighter. "Did Grayson send you?" The man didn't answer. His gaze drifted toward the computer behind her. "That footage isn't for public eyes." He lunged. Amani sidestepped instinctively, the flashlight swinging like a weapon. It struck his shoulder with a dull thud, and he stumbled back. She ran for the terminal, grabbed the flash drive, and yanked it free. The screen went black instantly. The man regained his balance and came after her again, faster this time. She sprinted toward the elevator, her heels echoing in frantic rhythm. The old doors slid open just as he reached out, his fingers grazing her sleeve. She slammed the close button, her chest heaving. The man's face disappeared as the doors sealed shut. For a long moment, she stood there trembling, clutching the flash drive like a lifeline. When she stepped out on the main floor, the night shift guards stared as she passed. She didn't speak, didn't slow down. Within minutes, she was back in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She called Julian. "Meet me at my place," she said, voice shaking. Now, it was 2 a.m. when Julian and Ella arrived at the penthouse. Rain still battered the windows. Amani stood in the living room, drenched, her hair clinging to her face. "You're soaked," Julian said, rushing to get a towel. "What happened?" "I found the footage," Amani said, holding up the flash drive. "But someone tried to stop me." Ella frowned. "Security?" "No," Amani said. "Someone off the books. He knew exactly what I was looking for." Julian stared at the drive. "You think Grayson sent him? Who else?" They sat around the coffee table as Amani plugged the drive into her laptop. The footage played again, grainy, haunting. None of them spoke as they watched the guards dragging her out. When it ended, Amani leaned back, exhausted. "This is enough to destroy them." Julian nodded slowly. "It's proof they discriminated against you and probably dozens more." Ella hesitated. "It's more than discrimination, sweetheart. It's murder by neglect." The words hung heavy in the air. "I'll contact the state investigators," Julian said. "They'll have to open a case after seeing this." "Not yet," Amani said softly. "We release it ourselves first." Julian frowned. "You want to go public?" "Yes," Amani said. "They're already using the media against us. We'll use it back. The world deserves to see this." Ella looked uneasy. "You'll make powerful enemies." Amani gave a small, tired smile. "I already have." By morning, the footage was uploaded to every major news outlet through a secure channel. Within hours, it went viral. Millions of people watched in disbelief as the video of Amani's assault played across their screens. Social media erupted with outrage. The headline read, "New hospital owner reveals disturbing video of her own denied treatment." The fallout was immediate. Protesters gathered outside Ridgeview, chanting for justice. Reporters swarmed the parking lot. Politicians demanded investigations. Inside the hospital, chaos spread. Staff whispered in corners, some terrified, others quietly relieved. Gina Parker, the intake nurse, resigned that morning. Dr. Reed deleted his social media. In his downtown office, Thomas Grayson watched the news in silence. His phone buzzed non-stop calls from lawyers, investors, board members. He ignored them all. Finally, he stood, poured himself a drink, and muttered under his breath, "You've made a mistake." Amani. At the penthouse, Amani's phone rang again, a known number. She hesitated, then answered. "You've gone too far," a male voice said. "You think the media will protect you? You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Then enlighten me," she said coldly. A pause, then a low laugh. "You think Grayson runs this? He's just a face. There are bigger people behind this hospital. People who don't like attention." The line went dead. Julian stared at her. What did he say? "That Grayson isn't the top," Amani whispered. "There's someone above him." Ella frowned. "Who?" "I don't know," she said. "But I'm going to find out." Later that night, Amani couldn't sleep. The city lights shimmered outside her window, but her mind was racing. She replayed the voice on the phone, the calmness, the certainty. Whoever that man was, he sounded untouchable. Her laptop chimed with a new email, no sender address, no subject line. Just a single attachment, a photo of her standing in the hospital basement, the flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The message below read, "You shouldn't have gone down there." Her pulse quickened. Someone had been watching her. Julian's voice echoed in her head, "They have friends everywhere." She closed the laptop, breathing deeply. Fear crept in like a shadow, but she pushed it down. She'd come too far to stop now. She picked up her phone and dialed Ella. "We need to meet first thing in the morning," she said quietly. "There's more to this than we thought." "What did you find?" "Not what," Amani said, staring out the window. "Who outside?" Lightning split the sky in two, illuminating the skyline. Somewhere in that same city, someone was watching her every move, and they weren't finished yet. The morning sky was a dull gray, heavy with clouds that hung low over the city. Amani sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo that had arrived in her inbox, the one showing her in the hospital basement. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been standing in the shadows that night, watching her every move. Julian and Ella arrived soon after sunrise. Neither spoke much. The air in the penthouse felt thick, charged with unease. "You're sure that photo was taken last night?" Julian asked, setting down her coffee. "Yes," Amani said quietly. "It's from the exact angle of the storage aisle. Someone was recording me." Ella frowned. "Whoever it is, they've got access to the hospital's internal cameras. Those are restricted." "That means they're inside," Julian said. "Someone's still working there." Amani nodded. "We're dealing with a leak, maybe more than one." Julian opened her tablet. "I've traced some of the payments from Ridgeview's fake billing accounts. The shell companies are registered under names that lead back to a bigger parent organization, Trivox Health Partners." Amani looked up sharply. "Trivox, the investment firm?" "Yes," Julian said. "They own shares in over 60 hospitals across the country, all with the same pattern: redirected patients, inflated insurance claims, altered death reports. Ridgeview was just one piece of it." Ella let out a low whistle. "So that's what Grayson meant when he said vital role in the community. He wasn't talking about care, he was talking about money." Amani's eyes narrowed. "And power." She stood and walked toward the window, watching the city below. "If Trivox is behind this, we're up against a machine that feeds on corruption. They use hospitals to launder funds and hide insurance fraud behind racial bias. It's perfect. Really, who questions a doctor's judgment when a poor black woman gets turned away?" Julian sighed. "We can't take them down alone." "I'm not asking to," Amani said. "But I won't back down either." Ella leaned forward. "You'll need allies, people who can't be bought or silenced." Amani nodded slowly. "Then I'll find them." Later that day, she walked through the marble halls of the State Justice Building. Her heels echoed sharply against the floor as she approached a familiar office door. The nameplate read, "Deputy Attorney General Marcus Hale." Marcus looked up when she entered, his dark eyes widening. "Amani Rivers." "Been a while." "Too long," she said with a faint smile. He gestured for her to sit. "I saw the video." "The country did. You're making waves." Waves aren't enough, she said. I have proof that Ridgeview and maybe dozens of hospitals have been redirecting patients based on race, falsifying records, and billing for services never rendered. Marcus leaned back. That's a bold accusation. I'm not accusing, she said, placing a flash drive on his desk. I'm proving. He picked it up, turning it in his hand. You realize if this is true, you're not just going after a hospital. You're going after Trivox Health Partners, a company with federal contracts, political donors, and deep ties in Washington. I know exactly who I'm going after, she said. Marcus was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. I'll review the files, but I need to warn you this won't stay quiet for long. The moment they realize you've involved the Justice Department, they'll come after you harder. They already are, she said softly. He nodded. Then you'd better be ready. By the time she returned to the hospital, the protests outside had grown larger. Reporters shouted questions as she passed. Ms. Rivers, do you plan to sue the former hospital board? Are you confirming reports of federal involvement? Do you feel safe after the threats? She didn't respond. She walked straight through the front doors, her face unreadable. Inside, she found Julian waiting near the elevators, phone in hand. We've got another problem, she said. Grayson's gone. Gone? He cleared out his office an hour ago. Security cameras show him leaving with 2 briefcases and a locked file box. Amani frowned. Where did he go? Julian shook her head. No trace. His car's still in the garage, but he left in a black SUV, no plates, tinted windows. Ella approached from down the hall, holding a printed document. I think I know why he ran. Look at this. It was a transfer record, millions wired from a Trivox account to a private offshore bank. The authorization signature at the bottom read Thomas Grayson. He's cashing out, Amani said. He knows the walls are closing in. Ella glanced around nervously. You think he'll try to disappear? No, Amani said. He'll try to silence anyone who can tie him to Trivox. As if on cue, her phone buzzed. A text message appeared from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Check your car. Her stomach dropped. She turned and ran toward the parking garage, Julian and Ella close behind. The moment they reached her black sedan, she froze. The driver's side window was cracked open, and inside, resting on the seat, was a single white envelope. Julian's voice trembled. Don't touch it. Amani used a pen to slide it open. Inside was a photo of Grayson, standing beside a man in a tailored gray suit. The man's face was half turned, but the caption printed at the bottom read, Elliot Maris, CEO, Trivox Health Partners. On the back of the photo, in neat handwriting, were the words, he doesn't like losing. Ella whispered, they're warning you. No, Amani said. They're daring me. That night, she sat in her office long after everyone had left. The hospital halls were silent. Rain streaked down the glass as the city lights glowed faintly beyond. Julian entered quietly. You haven't gone home in 2 days, she said softly. I can't, Amani replied. Not until this is done. Julian hesitated, then pulled up a file on her tablet. I think I found something on Maris. He was under investigation 5 years ago for insurance fraud in New York, but the case was dropped after a donation to the district attorney's office. He's untouchable. Everyone's untouchable until they're not, Amani said. Find me everything you can. Emails, contracts, offshore accounts. I want to know where every dollar goes. Julian nodded. You know this could destroy your company. Metasphere's investors are already nervous. Amani looked up at her, eyes calm. Some things are worth the risk. An hour later, Ella called in from the security office. Her voice was shaky. You might want to see this. On the monitors, a grainy feed showed the hospital's side entrance. A black SUV had pulled up. 2 men in suits stepped out and entered the building. Do you recognize them? Amani asked. Ella zoomed in. One of them looks like Maris's driver. The other, I've seen him before. He came here last year for an inspection. Julian's eyes widened. They're here now? Already inside, Ella said. Heading toward the executive wing. Lock the elevators, Amani said quickly. Now, Ella typed rapidly, disabling access from her terminal. The cameras showed the men stepping into the elevator, pressing the button and stopping when nothing happened. One of them spoke into his phone. The other looked up at the camera and smiled. Then, one by one, the camera feeds went dark. Ella, Amani said. I lost the signal, she whispered. They're cutting power to the security grid. Julian turned to Amani. We need to get out of here. But Amani shook her head. No, if they're coming for me, I'm not running. Are you crazy? Julian hissed. They could be armed. Then let them come, she said. I'm tired of hiding. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Heavy, slow, deliberate. Julian's breath hitched. They're here. Amani stood by her desk, eyes fixed on the door. The handle turned once, twice, then stopped. After a long pause, a slip of paper slid under the door. Julian bent to pick it up, her hands shaking. It was a note written in clean, block letters, last chance. Walk away. Amani's face hardened. They think I'm afraid. She looked at Julian. Call Marcus Hale. Tell him we're ready to go public with everything Trivox Grayson. The offshore accounts, tonight. Julian hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, Amani said. They've taken lives, silenced people, erased truth. It ends now. She glanced once more at the darkened hallway, where the faint shadow of one of the men lingered just beyond the frosted glass. Tell them, she said softly. We're not walking away. The shadow moved, then disappeared. And as thunder rolled across the city once more, Amani knew she had just declared war on something much bigger than Ridgeview. This wasn't about one hospital anymore. It was about every life lost to greed. The storm hadn't let up for 3 days. News vans lined the streets outside Ridgeview Medical Center, their lights cutting through the gray drizzle. The nation was watching now. Every channel had Amani Rivers' name plastered across its headlines. Some called her a hero. Others called her dangerous. Inside her office, the air was thick with exhaustion. Amani hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. Coffee cups cluttered her desk. Julian stood nearby, scrolling through her tablet. Marcus just confirmed it, she said quietly. The Justice Department opened a formal investigation into Trivox Health Partners. Finally, a flicker of satisfaction crossed Amani's tired face. That's a start. Julian hesitated. It's more than that. Trivox's stock dropped 30% overnight. Their investors are panicking. Maris has been off the grid since last night. Before Amani could respond, Ella entered, holding a newspaper. He's not hiding, she said. He's fighting back. The headline read, Trivox CEO accuses hospital owner of corporate espionage. Below it was a photo of Maris standing at a podium, surrounded by lawyers. Julian read aloud, Maris claims Ms. Rivers illegally obtained patient data and doctored videos to damage Trivox's reputation. He's demanding a criminal investigation into her company. Amani took the paper, her expression unreadable. He's cornered, she said, and desperate. Ella sat down heavily. Desperate people are dangerous, honey, especially men like that. Amani nodded slowly. That's why we stay ahead of him. Julian's tablet chimed. Wait, Marcus is calling. She answered, putting it on speaker. Amani, Marcus's voice said urgently, you need to get somewhere safe. My office was just raided by internal auditors claiming a conflict of interest in the Trivox case. Someone tipped them off. So they're coming after you too, she said quietly. It's worse, Marcus replied. A federal injunction just froze your company accounts. You're being accused of corporate sabotage. Julian's jaw dropped. They froze her assets? I'm trying to reverse it, Marcus said. But they've got political friends. Be careful who you trust. The line went dead. Amani leaned back, staring at the ceiling. They're cutting off every exit. Julian's voice shook. What are we going to do? Fight smarter, Amani said. If they want war, they'll get one. That night, the protest outside turned violent. The crowd split between those defending Amani and those swayed by Trivox's propaganda. Police sirens wailed as tear gas filled the air. Windows shattered. The hospital went into lockdown. Inside, Amani stood at the observation window, watching chaos unfold below. The flashing lights reflected in her eyes. This isn't what I wanted, she whispered. Ella joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. You can't blame yourself for people finally waking up. I just wanted the truth, Amani said. And that's exactly what scares them, Ella replied. Julian entered, holding a flash drive. I think this might be the final piece. Amani turned. What is it? An old email archive, she said, plugging it into her laptop. One of Grayson's private accounts. I found it buried under a Trivox server mirror. He thought it was deleted. The screen filled with hundreds of emails, conversations between Grayson and Maris, and even several state health officials. The words painted a horrifying picture. Amani read aloud, her voice shaking with anger. Redirect low-yield patients. Keep optics clean. Focus on profitable demographics. She scrolled further. Another line read, Metasphere acquisition poses threat. Neutralize Rivers if necessary. Julian covered her mouth. They were planning this even before you bought the hospital. Ella leaned closer. Look at the date. That's weeks before the night they denied you treatment. It wasn't an accident, Amani said. They knew who I was. They wanted me humiliated. Julian looked horrified. They staged it. Maybe not the pain, Amani said softly, but everything that followed the guards. Reed's arrogance, it was meant to send a message. They wanted to break me before I ever stepped through those doors. The realization hit hard. The entire ordeal, the humiliation, the threats, the attacks had been part of a larger plan. She stood in silence for a long moment, then spoke quietly. Julian, back up every file. Secure drive only. Ella, alert security. No one in or out without my clearance. They nodded and hurried off. For the first time, Amani felt the weight of everything she'd uncovered. Trivox wasn't just a corrupt company, it was a system built on cruelty, designed to profit from suffering. She picked up her phone and dialed Marcus again. No answer. She tried twice more. Still nothing. Her gut twisted. Something was wrong. An hour later, the hospital was quieter. The chaos outside had faded, replaced by the dull hum of rain. Amani walked down the corridor, heels clicking softly on the polished floor. She turned the corner and froze. The elevator doors slid open, revealing Thomas Grayson. He looked disheveled, his hair damp from the rain, his eyes hollow. We need to talk, he said. Amani's voice stayed calm. You have nothing left to say to me. You don't understand, he said, stepping closer. They're using both of us. Marisy's cleaning house. Everyone who knows too much is next. She crossed her arms. And why should I believe you? Because they already came for Marcus Hale, he said quietly. He's dead. The words hit her like a blow. What? Grayson nodded grimly. Car crash on the interstate. Except there were no skid marks. Just impact. Julian appeared behind her, breathless. What's going on? Grayson glanced at her, then back at Amani. You have no idea how deep this goes. Maris doesn't care about you, me, or this hospital. You exposed too much. Now you're a liability. Ella joined them, holding her phone. He's right, she said softly. The news just confirmed Marcus's death. They're calling it an accident. Amani's throat tightened. No, it's a message. Grayson stepped closer, lowering his voice. There's a file, something Maris kept off the books. Names of every official and politician tied to Trivox. I can get it, but you have to protect me. Protect you? Julian snapped. After everything you did? You think I wanted this? Grayson said sharply. I built Ridgeview to help people. Maris turned it into a money factory. When I tried to back out, he threatened my family. Amani studied him for a long moment. If you're lying, I'm not, he said. Meet me at Pier 7 midnight. I'll bring the file. It's the only thing that can stop him. He turned to leave, but before the elevator doors closed, he said quietly, don't trust anyone. Dr. Rivers, not even your own security. The hours crawled by. Midnight approached. Rain fell heavier, slashing across the city in cold sheets. Julian paced the office, anxious. You're really going? I have to, Amani said, pulling on her coat. If Grayson has proof, it's the only way to finish this. Then I'm coming with you, Julian insisted. No, Amani said firmly. You stay here. If something happens, release the files to every outlet you can. No hesitation. Julian's eyes glistened. Please be careful. Amani managed a small smile. I always am. She stepped out into the night, the rain soaking her coat instantly. The streets were nearly empty as she drove toward the harbor. Her headlights cut through the fog. The water shimmered in the distance like dark glass. Pier 7 was deserted except for a single streetlight flickering above the docks. Grayson stood near the edge, his hands shoved into his coat pockets. "You came alone," he said, relieved. "I don't scare easily," she replied. He nodded. "Good, because you're going to need that." He reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive. "Everything's here: names, accounts, offshore transfers, mayors, senators, CEOs. Enough to burn them all." She stepped closer. "Why give this to me?" "Because I'm tired of being their puppet," he said. "I want out." But before she could take it, a faint click echoed across the dock. Grayson froze. A red laser dot appeared on his chest. "Get down," Amani shouted. A gunshot shattered the silence. Grayson's body jerked backward, the flash drive flying from his hand into the water. Amani dove for cover as another shot rang out, splintering the wood beside her. She crawled toward the edge, heart pounding. Through the rain, she could see a black car parked at the end of the pier, engine running. Headlights off. A figure in a dark coat stood beside it, holding a rifle. The shooter turned, disappearing into the car. Tires screeched, and within seconds, the vehicle was gone. Amani rushed to Grayson's side. He was barely breathing. Blood spread across his chest. He looked at her weakly. "The file. There's another copy." "Where?" she cried. "Hospital server. Hidden partition." His eyes fluttered, then went still. Amani sat there in the rain, clutching his lifeless hand. For a long moment, she couldn't move. The city lights blurred through her tears. Finally, she whispered, "I'll finish it. I promise." She stood, soaked and trembling, staring into the dark water where the flash drive had sunk. The storm raged on, but inside her, something colder had taken root. This fight wasn't just about justice anymore. It was survival. The rain still poured when Amani drove back from the harbor, her wipers struggling against the sheets of water. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the road ahead, but her mind trapped in the moment she'd just lived. Grayson's face, the panic, the blood, the whisper of his last words played on a loop in her head. Hospital server, hidden partition. She repeated it under her breath like a vow. By the time she reached Ridgeview, dawn was breaking, gray lights spreading across the soaked parking lot. The building loomed ahead, silent, almost ghostly. It looked less like a hospital now, and more like a secret keeping itself alive. Julian met her at the entrance, drenched in worry. "You're okay," she gasped. "I saw the news shots fired at the pier. They said he's dead," Amani said quietly. "Grayson's gone." Julian froze, covering her mouth. "Oh my God, they killed him before he could hand me the evidence," Amani continued, walking past her. "But there's another copy, somewhere in the hospital servers." Ella joined them in the hallway, her eyes wide with fear. "You can't stay here, sweetheart. It's not safe. Whoever killed him might come for you next." "They already tried," Amani said, "and they failed." She walked toward the IT department. The sterile smell of disinfectant hung heavy in the air. Every monitor glowed dimly in the dark room. Julian followed, her voice trembling. "If the file's really hidden in the servers, it won't be easy to find. You'll need access to the core database." "I have full credentials," Amani said. "They can't lock me out of my own hospital." She logged into the main console, fingers flying across the keyboard, screens filled with lines of code. Ella and Julian stood close behind, their reflections flickering in the glass. "There," Amani whispered. "Encrypted partition, invisible to standard scans." Julian frowned. How did Grayson even hide this? "Same way criminals hide anything," Amani said. "Behind bureaucracy." She entered a series of commands. The system hummed. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered. "Power surge," Ella asked. "No," Amani said. "Someone's trying to block the download." Julian's eyes widened. "From where?" Before she could answer, the overhead speakers crackled to life. A man's voice echoed through the empty hallway, calm and controlled. "Dr. Rivers," it said. "I thought we agreed to stay out of each other's way." Amani froze. "Maris." Julian looked around. "How is he tapping into the hospital intercom?" "I own the building's network," the voice continued. "You've made quite a mess, haven't you? Protests, investigations, blood on the pier. All for what? Attention." Amani clenched her fists. You killed Grayson. No, Maris said smoothly. He killed himself the moment he started talking. Some people just don't understand when to stop digging. What do you want? She demanded. Simple, he replied. Walk away. Transfer Ridgeview back to Trivox, and I'll make all this disappear. You'll even keep your precious reputation. You think I care about reputation? She said bitterly. I care about the people you've buried under your profits. Maris laughed softly through the speakers. You can't save the world, Dr. Rivers. You'll only drown trying. The line went silent. Julian turned to Amani. We need to get that data now. Amani nodded, typing faster. The system beeped, then unlocked a hidden folder. Files spilled across the screen: contracts, payments, offshore transactions, private communications. The web of corruption was massive. There it is, she said, her voice low. The whole network. Ella pointed at one of the file names. Look, Policy Directive 19. What's that? Amani opened it. A document appeared cold. Calculated instructions. Prioritize revenue streams by redirecting low-income and minority patients to secondary facilities. Maintain optics. Suppress internal complaints. Authorized by E. Maris. Julian's jaw dropped. He signed it himself. It's over, Amani said. We have everything we need. But before she could copy the files, the screens went black. System override, Julian muttered. He's wiping the data remotely. Not if I can stop him, Amani said, yanking a portable drive from her bag and plugging it in. Manual transfer, old school style. The progress bar crawled slowly 1% to 3%. Come on, she whispered. The hum of the servers filled the silence. Then came footsteps echoing through the corridor outside. Ella peered through the glass. We've got company. 2 men in black suits moved down the hall, each with earpieces and holstered guns. Julian's voice trembled. They're not security. Keep the transfer running, Amani said. She grabbed a metal rod from the maintenance rack and handed it to Ella. Lock the door. The men reached the end of the hall. One tried the handle. Dr. Rivers, he called. We just wanted to talk. Yeah, I bet, Ella muttered, pushing a file cabinet against the door. The second man kicked hard. The cabinet rattled but held. 30%, Julian said, eyes fixed on the screen. Hold the line, Amani said. The men outside began smashing the glass. Shards scattered across the floor. The noise was deafening. 45%, Julian said. Almost halfway. Ella swung the metal rod as the first arm reached through the window, striking hard. The man screamed, pulling back with blood on his sleeve. Nice arm, Amani said breathlessly. Ella grinned. Retired softball champion, baby. The second kick cracked the doorframe. The transfer bar hit 70%. Come on, Amani whispered. The door burst open. The 2 men stormed in. Ella swung again, knocking one backward, but the other lunged toward the desk. Julian grabbed the monitor cable and yanked it loose, sparks flying. The lights flickered. Transfer complete, the computer chimed. Amani ripped the flash drive out just as one of the men tackled her to the floor. The device skidded across the tiles. She elbowed him hard, breaking free, crawling toward the drive. The man grabbed her ankle, dragging her back, but Ella slammed the rod down on his arm, forcing him to release her. Julian dove for the flash drive and shoved it into her pocket. Got it. Amani grabbed her hand. Run. They sprinted down the hall, alarms blaring. The 2 men staggered up and gave chase. Through the stairwell, down the emergency exit, the rain waiting for them outside like a wall. Go, go, go. Ella yelled as they burst into the parking lot. A black SUV screeched around the corner, blocking their path. The same model from the pier. Julian froze. We're trapped. Amani scanned the lot and spotted a white ambulance idling near the emergency ramp. The driver door was open. This way, she shouted. They ran for it. Amani jumped behind the wheel, slammed the door, and gunned the engine. Tires screeched as the ambulance shot forward, clipping the SUV's bumper. Bullets shattered the back window as they sped onto the street. Ella ducked low. These people are insane. They're desperate, Amani said, eyes on the road. Desperate people make mistakes. Rain blurred the windshield. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Julian clutched the flash drive in her shaking hands. This is everything, right? We've got the proof. Yes, Amani said, determination burning through her exhaustion. And we're not stopping until every name on that list is exposed. The SUV followed close behind, headlights glaring through the storm. Hang on, Amani yelled, swerving sharply down a narrow side street. The tires skidded but held. The SUV tried to follow and slammed into a lamppost. They sped into the darkness, hearts pounding. For a long while, no one spoke. The only sound was the wipers scraping across the windshield. Then Ella exhaled shakily. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, Amani said. Somewhere Maris doesn't own. Julian looked down at the flash drive in her palm. This little thing could change everything. Amani nodded, eyes locked on the road. Then we'll protect it with everything we've got. The city lights faded behind them as they drove toward the outskirts, rain easing into a cold mist. They had the evidence. They had the truth. But as Amani knew too well, truth alone wasn't enough. You had to survive long enough to tell it. The night air was thick with fog as the ambulance sped out of the city. Amani's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her heart still hammering from the chase. Behind her, Ella and Julian sat silent, both staring out the shattered back window where rain seeped through. The flash drive, the one that could destroy Trivox, gleamed faintly in Julian's trembling hand. They didn't stop until the skyline disappeared behind them. The road stretched endlessly through dark fields, broken only by flashes of lightning in the distance. Finally, Amani pulled into an old service station off the highway. She killed the engine. For a moment, all three just sat there, catching their breath. Julian broke the silence first. We can't go back to the city. They'll be waiting for us. Amani nodded. I know. But we can't hide forever either. Ella wiped rain from her face. So what now, boss? You've got the proof, but no safe place to use it. Amani leaned back, thinking. We upload it to every major outlet at once. News networks, watchdog groups, whistleblower platforms everywhere. Julian frowned. We'd need a secure connection. Trivox has digital watchdogs that track leaks. The moment you go online, they'll trace it. Then we find someone who can cover our trail, Amani said. Ella gave a low chuckle. You know anyone good enough to outsmart a billion-dollar company? Amani looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror and smiled faintly. I know someone better. An hour later, they reached a rundown diner off an empty highway. The neon sign flickered weakly, buzzing in the rain. Inside, only a handful of truckers sat nursing their coffee. The place smelled of bacon grease and stale cigarettes. Amani slid into a booth in the corner and pulled out her phone. After a few seconds, she sent a single message to an old contact. 5 minutes later, a figure in a dark hoodie walked through the door. He scanned the room, spotted them, and came over. His name was Dax, a quiet, scruffy man with sharp eyes and the calm of someone who lived on the edges of the digital world. Been a long time, Rivers, he said, sitting down. Didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. Desperate times, she said. I need you to make sure something reaches the world before they can erase it. He raised an eyebrow. You're going after Trivox, huh? That's suicide. Maybe, she said. But it's necessary. Dax smiled faintly. You haven't changed. He pulled a small laptop from his backpack. Let's see what we're dealing with. Julian handed him the flash drive. Everything's on there: emails, contracts, payment trails. Dax plugged it in, his fingers flying across the keyboard. You weren't kidding, he murmured. This isn't just bad, this is biblical. Can you get it out safely? Amani asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I'll need about an hour to route it through enough proxies. Once it's live, they can't stop it. Amani leaned back, exhaustion washing over her. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. But that hope didn't last long. The bell above the diner door jingled again. 2 men in suits stepped in, shaking off their umbrellas. Their eyes swept the room slowly. Ella froze. That's them, she whispered. Same suits from the hospital. Dax looked up, tension rising. We're burned. Can you finish the upload? Amani asked. Not here, he said. They'll kill the Wi-Fi or trace it in seconds. Then we take it to your setup, she said. He nodded, closing the laptop. Follow me. I've got a place not far from here. As they stood to leave, One of the suited men stepped in front of them, blocking the exit. "Dr. Rivers," he said politely. "Mr. Maris would like a word." Amani's voice was calm but cold. "Tell him he can find me on the evening news." The man smiled faintly. "That won't be necessary." Before he could reach for her arm, Ella threw her cup of hot coffee in his face. He shouted, clutching his eyes. Dax pushed open the back door, and they ran into the storm. Bullets shattered the diner windows as they sprinted across the parking lot. Dax's beat-up van waited nearby. They jumped in, and he floored the gas. The tires squealed, sending mud flying. Julian clutched the laptop to her chest. "Please tell me this thing's still working." "Relax," Dax said, grinning as he drove. "It's built like a tank." The van sped down the deserted highway, headlights slicing through the rain. "Where are we going?" Ella shouted. "Old radio tower up north," Dax said. "No signal trackers, no surveillance. I can finish the upload there." They drove for nearly an hour through winding backroads and thick forest, until they reached an abandoned communication tower surrounded by rusted fences. Dax parked near the base and jumped out. "Stay close," he said. "Once we're inside, I'll need 10 minutes. They followed him into a small, dusty control room filled with ancient equipment. Dax hooked up his laptop and began typing. The screen glowed in the dark, lines of code flashing rapidly. Come on, he muttered. Julian stood watch by the window while Ella paced nervously. Amani stood still, listening to the rain hitting the tin roof. Every second felt like an hour. Then Dax grinned. "We're live, uploading to every major news platform and backup mirror in real time." "Can they stop it?" Amani asked. "Not unless they shut down the entire internet," he said. A sudden rumble outside made them all jump. Headlights appeared through the trees, 3 black SUVs approaching fast. Ella cursed. "They found us." Dax's eyes widened. "How?" "They must have traced your signal," Julian said. Dax slammed his hand on the keyboard. 2 more minutes. "I just need to." The SUV screeched to a stop outside. Men in tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn. "Get down," Amani shouted. Gunfire ripped through the windows. The old tower shook as bullets hit the metal walls. Dax crouched low, still typing furiously. 1 more minute. Julian pulled Ella to the floor as glass shattered above them. The room filled with smoke and dust. Then, suddenly, Dax's laptop beeped. "Done, it's out there. Every file, every name. They can't hide anymore." "Move," Amani yelled. "We've got to go." They ran toward the back exit, but one of the armed men was already there. He raised his gun, then a loud bang echoed. The man dropped, hit by a warning shot from behind. A voice called out, "Federal agents, drop your weapons." More headlights appeared, black SUVs with government insignias. The Justice Department had arrived, storming in with rifles raised. The Trivox men scattered into the trees. Marcus Hill's deputy, Agent Lauren Pierce, stepped forward, shouting commands. "Secure the area. Find Dr. Rivers." Amani stepped out, coughing through the smoke. "Right here." Pierce lowered her weapon in surprise. "You're lucky. We traced Maris's private channels. He's already fleeing the country. You just helped us catch half his operation." Amani glanced back at Dax, who was still holding his laptop like a trophy. "The files. Everywhere," he said proudly. "News outlets, watchdogs, even encrypted backups. It's unstoppable." Pierce nodded. "Then you just changed everything." By sunrise, the raid was over. Trivox executives were already under arrest, their names flooding the headlines. The story had exploded worldwide, a $1 billion healthcare fraud exposed by one woman's courage. In the hospital cafeteria, staff huddled around the TV, watching the news reports in awe. Ella smiled softly. "You did it," she whispered to Amani. Julian handed her a cup of coffee. "Grayson's death won't be in vain." Amani nodded slowly. "Neither will any of theirs." She walked down the corridor, stopping by their doors, the same place where it all began. The morning light poured in, warm and golden. A nurse opened the doors for a young woman clutching her stomach, pale and scared. No one hesitated this time. They rushed her in immediately. Amani watched quietly, her heart full. The system wasn't perfect yet, but it was changing. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to breathe. Later that evening, she stood on the hospital's rooftop, the city glowing beneath her. The chaos had ended, but her fight had changed the country. Julian joined her, smiling faintly. "You realize you've started a movement, right?" Amani looked out over the skyline. "Good. Maybe it's time the right people were scared for once." A soft breeze brushed her face. Somewhere far below, sirens wailed faint now, like echoes of the past. She thought of Grayson, of Marcus, of every patient whose voice had been silenced. And she whispered into the wind, "We told the truth." Julian placed a hand on her shoulder. "What now?" Amani smiled. "Now, we rebuild." She turned and walked toward the rooftop stairs, her silhouette fading into the golden light of dusk. Behind her, the sun dipped lower, but for the first time in a long time. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. Morning sunlight washed over the city, soft and golden, like the world had exhaled after a long storm. Ridgeview Medical Center looked different now, its glass walls gleaming, its halls alive again. The chaos, the fear, the corruption, they were fading, replaced by something new, hope. Amani Rivers stood in her office, staring at the framed newspaper front page that hung on the wall. The headline read, "Whistleblower Doctor Expose is National Healthcare Scandal." Beneath it was her photo, standing on the hospital steps, surrounded by reporters and protesters cheering her name. Julian walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. "It's official," she said with a tired smile. "Congress just launched a full-scale investigation into Trivox and all its affiliates. Maris's empire is collapsing." Amani accepted the cup. "What about Maris himself?" Julian hesitated. "Interpol picked him up in Zurich this morning. Fake passport, offshore accounts, the works. He's being extradited to the U.S. for a long moment." Amani didn't speak. She looked out the window, watching the traffic below. "So it's over." Julian shook her head gently. "No, it's just beginning. The system still has cracks, too many people willing to look away." Amani nodded slowly. "Then we'll fix it. One hospital at a time." Ella entered, her white uniform freshly pressed, a stack of patient charts in her arms. "Ladies," she said, grinning. "I just got back from there. Guess what?" Julian raised an eyebrow. "What?" "They treated a homeless man with no insurance before asking a single question. Took him straight in." A small smile tugged at Amani's lips. "That's how it should be." Ella set the charts down. "And the staff's morale? Completely different. People are proud to work here again." "You did that, sweetheart." "No," Amani said softly. "We did." Later that day, she walked through the hospital corridors. Everywhere she went, people nodded in quiet respect. Nurses smiled. Patients reached out to thank her. Even the air felt lighter, cleaner. She stopped at the waiting room, the same one where she'd once sat for hours, ignored and dismissed. Now, a young black nurse was handing water to a nervous patient, offering comfort with kindness. Amani's eyes welled with emotion. She remembered every second of that night, every word of humiliation that had pushed her to this point. But standing here now, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace. A little boy in a blue hoodie ran past her, laughing. His mother chased after him, apologizing. "Sorry, doctor." Amani smiled. "No harm done." The boy turned and waved at her before disappearing around the corner. That small, simple gesture was enough to make her heart swell. Life was moving forward. By afternoon, she was at a federal hearing in downtown D.C., sitting in a large room filled with cameras, senators, and reporters. The Trivox case had become a national spectacle. Screens displayed documents, emails, contracts, and data leaks, all proving how the company had manipulated hospitals for profit. One senator adjusted his glasses and leaned toward the microphone. "Dr. Rivers, is it true that your hospital was used as a testing ground for discriminatory patient protocols?" "Yes," she said clearly. "Ridgeview wasn't unique. It was part of a system designed to treat patients as revenue streams instead of human lives." The senator nodded. "And you risked your career, your company, and your life to expose this?" "I didn't risk them," she replied. "They were taken from me the moment I walked into an ER and was told I didn't belong. I just decided to take them back." A murmur spread through the room. Cameras flashed. "Last question," another senator said. "What do you hope comes from all this?" Amani took a deep breath. I hope one day a woman like me can walk into a hospital in pain and be seen for what she is, a person, not a problem. I hope no one ever dies because someone decided their life wasn't profitable." Silence filled the chamber. Then, softly, applause began. That night, back in her penthouse, Amani sat on her balcony with a glass of tea. The city glowed below, quiet and calm. Julian joined her, draping a blanket over her shoulders. "You did it," she said softly. "You actually did it." Amani shook her head with a tired smile. "We did it. And Grayson helped, even if it cost him everything." Julian stared out at the skyline. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't gone to that hospital that night?" "All the time," Amani admitted. "Maybe I'd still be running Metasphere, chasing numbers. Maybe none of this would have happened. Do you regret it?" Amani looked at her, then at the city below. Not for a second. They sat in silence for a while, the sound of distant sirens blending with the hum of traffic. Julian broke the silence. "You know the world's calling you a hero." Amani chuckled softly. "Heroes don't get death threats in their inbox." "Maybe not," Julian said, smiling. "But they changed the world anyway." The next morning, Amani visited Grayson's grave. The sky was pale and clear, the wind cool. She knelt down, setting a small white lily on the stone. His name was carved neatly beneath the date of his death. Beneath that, someone, probably Ella, had left a small plaque that read, "The truth always finds a way." She traced her fingers over the words. "You were right, Thomas," she whispered. "They can't bury it forever." Behind her, footsteps crunched on the gravel. She turned to see Ella approaching, hands tucked into her coat pockets. "Figured I'd find you here," Ella said softly. "I owed him this," Amani replied. Ella nodded. "He made his mistakes, but he tried to fix them in the end. That counts for something." They stood together for a long moment, the cemetery quiet around them. Finally, Ella said, "You going back to work tomorrow?" "Yes," Amani said. "There's too much left to do." Ella smiled gently. "That's my girl." Back at Ridgeview, the lobby was bustling. New signage covered the walls, "Every life matters." Volunteers helped patients register. The waiting times had dropped. Julian met Amani near the main entrance. "You ready for your press statement?" Amani laughed softly. "After everything we've been through, I think I can handle a few reporters." As she stepped up to the podium, dozens of cameras flashed. She looked out at the crowd, nurses, doctors, patients, journalists, all watching her with anticipation. "Not long ago," she began, "I stood outside these doors, bleeding, scared, and ignored. Tonight, I stand here as proof that no system is too powerful to challenge, no voice too small to be heard." The room fell completely silent. "Healthcare is about humanity," she continued. "It's about kindness, compassion, and courage. Ridgeview will stand for all of that, from this day forward." Applause thundered through the hall. Tears filled the eyes of staff and patients alike. Julian smiled proudly. "You've started a revolution, Amani." Amani looked out at the sea of faces, her heart full. "No," she said softly. "We've started a healing." That evening, as the sun set over the hospital, Amani walked through the quiet halls once more. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee, the hum of monitors filling the distance. She paused by a window, watching the light fade. The reflection staring back at her was the same woman but not the same soul. She whispered to herself, "Never again." Never again would someone be silenced, dismissed, or left to die because of who they were. As she walked toward her office, the lights dimmed softly behind her, the hospital settling into a peaceful rhythm. Outside, the city pulsed with new life. She had fought, lost, and bled for this moment, and finally, she had won. Weeks passed, but the world didn't quiet down. Every major news channel still ran her story. Journalists dissected the Trivox scandal in endless debates. Politicians used her name in speeches, calling for reform. But through all the noise, Amani stayed quiet. She wasn't chasing headlines anymore. She was rebuilding lives. The new Ridgeview Foundation had already begun its outreach, funding free clinics, mobile units, and community health programs in the poorest neighborhoods. What had once been a symbol of greed was now a sanctuary of hope. On a crisp spring morning, Amani stood in the middle of a small town square, watching volunteers set up a pop-up clinic beneath bright blue tents. Children laughed as nurses handed out fruit cups. An elderly woman hugged her, whispering, "Thank you, doctor. Nobody ever cared enough to come here before." Amani smiled, her heart warm. "We care now," she said softly. Julian joined her, clipboard in hand. "Media wants to do another follow-up interview. CNN this time." Amani chuckled. "Tell them I'm busy saving lives." Julian grinned. "That's what I told them last week." They shared a laugh. For once, the sound wasn't heavy, it was light, healing. Later that day, Amani returned to her car, where Ella was waiting in the driver's seat. The old nurse had refused to retire, insisting she'd stay until the wheels fall off. Ella handed her a brown envelope. "Mail came for you. Looks official." Amani opened it and unfolded a letter embossed with a federal seal. Her eyes widened as she read. "What is it?" Ella asked. Amani smiled slowly. "It's from the Department of Justice. They're launching a nationwide reform program based on the Ridgeview model. They want me to lead the advisory board." Ella's mouth dropped. "You mean you're going to Washington?" "Maybe for a while," Amani said softly. "But I'll always come back here." Ella nodded, proud tears glistening in her eyes. "You did it, sweetheart. You really did." Amani looked out the window as the car pulled away, sunlight filtering through the trees. Somewhere deep down, she felt Grayson's voice again, soft, steady, and proud. "You finished what we started." 2 weeks later, Washington, D.C. The grand marble halls of the Capitol reflected the golden morning light. Inside, the energy buzzed. Senators, doctors, advocates, and press from all over the country gathered for the official signing of the Healthcare Integrity Act. As Amani entered the room, cameras turned. Flashbulbs popped. She looked elegant in a dark navy suit, but her eyes carried the calm weight of someone who had already fought her biggest battle. The president himself stood at the podium, smiling warmly. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor a woman whose courage exposed injustice and restored faith in the system, meant to protect us all. Please welcome Dr. Amani Rivers." Applause thundered. She stepped forward, shook the president's hand, and took the microphone. "I didn't come here to be thanked," she began softly. "I came here because too many voices go unheard until it's too late. But when truth becomes louder than fear, everything changes." Her voice carried across the hall, steady, heartfelt, unforgettable. "This bill isn't about me," she continued. "It's about the single mother waiting 12 hours in an emergency room. It's about the janitor who can't afford his prescription. It's about the nurse who works double shifts just to keep her patients alive. It's about fairness." Silence fell. Every camera pointed at her, but she wasn't speaking for fame. She was speaking for them. When she finished, the entire room rose in applause. Even the president looked visibly moved. Julian, sitting in the crowd, wiped away a tear. Ella clapped until her hands shook, and for a brief, shining moment, it felt like the world was healing. That evening, back at her hotel room, Amani sat by the window, looking out at the Potomac River shimmering under the moonlight. She opened her laptop. Hundreds of emails poured in. Messages from hospitals across the country asking for help, from students thanking her for inspiring them, from strangers sharing their own stories. She read one from a young nurse in Alabama, Dr. Rivers. "I almost quit after watching a patient die because of hospital policy. But after hearing your story, I stayed. I'm fighting now. Thank you." Amani smiled through tears. That one message meant more than every award combined. Julian called her phone. "I know you're pretending to work," she teased. "Come downstairs. We're celebrating." "I'll be there soon," Amani said, laughing softly. She closed the laptop and stood by the balcony door. The air was cool, the night alive with city sounds. Somewhere below, music and laughter echoed faintly from the street. She closed her eyes and took a long, deep breath. The weight she'd carried for years finally felt lighter. Months later, back in her hometown, the community gathered for the official opening of the Rivers Wellness Center, a free clinic built in her honor. The building stood where an abandoned warehouse once decayed, a symbol reborn. Children played outside as a brass band performed. Local officials gave speeches, but all eyes were on Amani when she stepped up to the podium. She looked out at the crowd, faces full of hope, gratitude, and pride. "When I was a little girl," she began, My mother used to tell me, if they don't open the door, build your own. Laughter rippled through the audience. Well, she said with a smile, we built our own. Applause erupted, long and heartfelt. After the ceremony, she wandered through the clinic halls. Bright murals covered the walls painted by local kids. Exam rooms smelled of new paint and sanitizer. Volunteers greeted patients warmly. Julian caught up to her, clipboard in hand. You know, for someone who said she'd slow down, you're busier than ever. Amani smiled. That's what happens when people finally believe they can make a difference. Ella passed by, handing lollipops to giggling children. Hey boss, no crying in the new building, all right? Amani laughed. No promises. She walked into her new office, a small space with sunlight spilling across the floor. On the desk sat a photo of her, Julian, Ella, and Grayson, smiling together during better days. She touched the frame gently. Thank you, she whispered. That night, after everyone had gone, she stepped outside. The clinic lights glowed softly behind her. Across the street, fireflies danced in the humid air. She sat on a bench, listening to the hum of distant traffic, the world finally at peace. Julian joined her with 2 cups of tea. So, she said, smiling, what's next, doctor? Amani looked up at the stars. I don't know, she said softly. Maybe for once, I'll just rest. Julian nodded. You've earned it. They sat there together in silence, the night calm and full of life. Amani thought about everything she'd lost and everything she'd gained. She thought about the people who believed in her, the ones who stood by her, and the ones who didn't live to see this day. And deep in her heart, she knew the fight had been worth it. Every wound, every scar, every sleepless night worth it. Because in the end, the truth had not only changed the system, it had changed her. As the moon rose higher, she whispered one final promise to herself and to the world she'd helped heal. Never again will silence be stronger than truth. The night wind carried her words softly across the empty street, disappearing into the stars. And for the first time in her life, Dr. Amani Rivers smiled without fear.